Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Twanger's Turntable. Hope the season finds you all well. You're enjoying time with your friends, family, loved ones, and season's greetings. My previous video was my official debut video, my premiere, although I had done one prior to that. If you've seen the videos, you'll know. But it was based on debut albums that I have in my collection, whether that be on the medium of vinyl, CD, cassette, and that's pretty much the runs the gamut of what I have. I don't have any 8-track or reel-to-reel. My collection doesn't expand to that degree. So I'm gonna do basically I've decided it would be a trilogy of sorts, because when I was actually working on that video, I quickly realized I had many more debut albums, artists that I could include in that video, but it was done kind of hastily and in a rush, and so I didn't put it together the way I had wanted to. So this is part 2 of that trilogy. So I'll just be doing a continuation of debut albums by artists and whatnot. So just what I have in my collection. Some of them will be ones that are my favorites. Others are just ones that I enjoy that don't rank quite as high in my favor, but I enjoy them nonetheless. Cheers. Take a drink here and wet my whistle. So I'm going to start with the mediums that I use less frequently these days. I primarily enjoy vinyl the most. Although what I listen to the most would be the digital format, such as Apple Music and whatnot. When I'm driving in my vehicle, that's typically what I'm listening to. Even around home, my wife and I will have it on our stereo. It's typically digital. So I'm going to start off with compact disc, and I'm going to try and do it in somewhat of a chronological order as far as date. But not necessarily. There will be some exceptions to this just because of the ones that I've chosen. Right off the top, though, I'm going to go with ZZ Top's debut. This is 1971. They're self-titled, just called ZZ Top's first album. And I have this on a combo compact disc. It's the only way I could find it. I still haven't sourced it on vinyl. I know it's out there somewhere. I'm just not willing to pay the big bucks for it. But yeah, it's nothing against the ZZ Top's later stuff, Eliminator, Afterburner, Recycler, which this is combined with. Great stuff. But for me, it's ZZ Top in the 70s that I primarily enjoy the most. The three hombres, the three guys, Beard and, rest in peace, Dusty and Billy. Great debut. If you've not heard that one, I think it's worthwhile checking out. It's where ZZ Top began, and to me, that's real Southern rock blues based. And Frank Beard to me is one of my favorite. Just the sound that he produces. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Now, because these ones specifically aren't chronological because they're my CDs. I've tried to put in order the date of my vinyl, but these aren't. I've just grabbed these because I know they're debuts. Next up is Rage Against the Machine. This one we go to 92, I believe, 91, 92. In fact, they did an EP. Well, it was a full-length cassette they had made to give out their concerts of the same title prior to releasing this one. And in fact, 7 of the songs that appear on this, their self-titled debut, appeared on that as well. They were just more of a demo, rougher version of it. But yeah, great debut album. I really like Rage Against the Machine. Sometimes the whole political part of I don't pay much attention to that. It's the music that I listen to most of this stuff primarily for. I'm not looking for a message or anything like that. It's just really good. This is hard rock metal. I mean, no denying that, but a great debut. Another from that era. This is probably my favorite by this band, which 2 of the members have since passed away. Of course, the most prominent being Lane Staley. This is Facelift by Alice in Chains, 1990. Great band. The bass player also passed away much later on. I think it was 2011, 2010. I mean, it was at least 10 years ago. The bass player passed away. And of course, Jerry Cantrell, you know, he's done his own solo stuff as well with Bogey Depot. I mean, actually, the drummer from Alice in Chains played on that album as well with Jerry Cantrell. Now we're going to 84, and this one I remember hearing for the first time on a video program where I reside in Canada. It was called Much Music. I think it might have been on the Power Hour. At that time it was the Power Hour, then they changed to the Power 30 or something like that. And it's 84, March of the Saints, Armored Saint. Great album for a debut. I actually didn't follow them much after that. I mean, I've heard their stuff, like I say, because I have digital format. I mean, you can listen to almost anything on Apple Music and find it. But this to me was their best, and I just remember hearing this and having to buy it. And I don't have it on vinyl, only compact disc. I used to have it on cassette as well, and I do have many cassettes that are in a box somewhere, so maybe it's still there. But yeah, that's another great one from 84. I'll end off here with a couple of Canadian content that are probably much more obscure on a global level. One of them had some moderate success here in Canada, and I actually think I saw them back in the day in Calgary. This would have been 89 or so, 90. Yeah, well, it would have had to have been early 90 because life changed drastically for me in 90, but I won't get into that. Slick Toxic, and this one is from... what is this? 91, 92. This is their debut album, I think. I don't know much about this band, actually. It might be their only album, but they were out of Canada here, and they did have some moderate success. I think they were nominated and even awarded Best Hard Rock Group of the Year in 93 or 92. But what became of them, I don't know. I mean, it's very obviously it's got a very targeted audience. So, and at that time when grunge was exploding, you know, this kind of glam metal, hair metal wasn't as popular, for lack of a better term. So Slick Toxic out of Canada, you know, that one was a great debut, good debut. I don't know if that category is great. Another one, good. These guys didn't, I don't think they produced anything more than this album as well, but also out of Canada. Headstrong. They did have a fairly popular tune on the airwaves here, Adriana, I think it was called. But yeah, it's, you know, it's heavy, kind of mixed into that rap metal genre. Similar. No, I'm not going to really compare them to Rage Against the Machine, just that type of music. It's got that heavy metal rap that was popular at the time. But yeah, but this one is actually probably 02, I think. Yeah, 2002, Headstrong, self-titled debut, and only, I think. I got only picked out about 4 cassettes here, just because they are actually this is the one I've had since it was new, and I already showed you this, but it was this is the one I bought when it was released in 90. Alice in Chains, Facelift. My wife and I really enjoyed that. I don't even know if I could play it now. It's probably wore out, but great. I already alluded to that, how good that one is and what I think of it. This one was sort of a tribute for Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble after their accident where he perished. It's actually got a couple of members of the Double Trouble, his band, Stevie Ray, but Archangels. This is 92 that came out, and the members from you know, the surviving members of Double Trouble, on drums Chris Layton, and the bass would be Tommy Shannon on bass. Yeah, this yeah, it also had this is going way back, but the keyboardist from the Faces, the band Faces, if you're familiar with those, he was on this album, and the Small Faces as well. But most people, I got to stop saying that, not most people, but if you've heard tell of the Faces, Small Faces, and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, you need to listen to this if you have not. It's just a great, this is blues, it's rock, southern rock. Yeah, if you like Stevie Ray Vaughan, Leonard Skinner, even to some degree, the Allman Brothers, that type of music, that's what you're going to get out of this. But I don't know, it's A1. Another debut, this would be 86, Tesla. 1986, this is their debut album. They would go on to have bigger albums, especially their live one that they did, the 5-man acoustical jam, you know, where they did the cover of Signs. They did a lot of covers on that album, but anyway, it's blanking right now. But 1986 for Tesla, great debut. They also did a cover on this one by an old British band, PhD. Little Susie was on here. But that's the album. I think that might have been the first Tesla album I heard. I'm pretty sure it was the debut. And funny enough, a lot of the albums I have here that are debuts are probably the first that I heard of these. And I'm fortunate that way. I think anyway, it's a great place to start. But there are bands that if somebody was asking me what they should listen to, being introduced to, it may not be their debut, but many of these would be. Cheers again. So now I'll move on to the vinyl that I have in the debut collection, and again, just ones I have in my collection that I think are worthy. Well, not even worthy. They're just I'm really just showing you what's in my collection of debut material, and these ones I have put in chronological order, date. So starting in 77, this would be. Yeah, it's that time. I need these. So yeah, Dire Straits, 1977. 78. This was 78. Sorry, this is, I think recorded 77 is what I read. But Mark and David Knopfler, brothers. David Knopfler would only play on the first 2 albums. In fact, they actually did the entire recording of their third, Making Movies, with David Knopfler on guitar. But then they re-recorded his parts after he left the band. Yeah, this I attribute this to my older brother, primarily. I think Stevie, Andy, I'm not sure which, but was played nonstop in my home. I heard this. There wouldn't be a week that went by where I didn't hear this album growing up, and so it's almost ingrained in me. And then maybe there's a fondness in that regard. But all that aside, it's actually an amazing album. Most people that are familiar with even FM radio would have heard Sultans of Swing. I mean, that's what's on here. And to me, the Wild West End, I mean, there's so many great tunes on here. Yeah, In the Gallery, Down to the Waterline, yeah, Six Blade Knife. Just, yeah, awesome album for a debut. Wow, you know, think about it. Another one, I messed that up. That's 78. This next one is actually 77. My apologies. And this is another one that might be a little more obscure to the larger picture of a global audience, but in Canada, it was quite popular, and that would be Jerry Doucette, his band Doucette, a gentleman from Montreal. In 77, this was released, and where I grew up, I don't know if it was that popular in 77, but I do recall hearing it only because, again, my siblings, it was played in my house a lot. This one I would have a tribute to my third oldest brother, second oldest, third oldest brother, Stevie. He listened to this a lot. Mama Let Him Play is the big hit that was on here, at least in Canada. But there's actually some really good tunes on here from start to finish. Big one. And then we'll go to 78, and probably one of the biggest debuts. No, it wouldn't be one of the biggest of all time, but certainly of that era. You couldn't go anywhere. And I remember this coming out again because of my siblings, but The Cars, this Let the Good Times Roll, you know, that's a very popular song. There's a lot of good songs on here. Fun fact about this, the drummer, David Robinson, was usually responsible for the album art, design. Also was, he came up with the band name, The Cars. But of course, you know, Rick Ocasek and Orr on bass vocals. Yeah, great album for debut, 1978, The Cars. One of my favorites, again, 1978, one of my favorite drummers for sure. Mr. Copeland and the Police. This is their debut. Probably best known for the big hits, Roxanne, So Lonely, Can't Stand Losing You. Funny enough, this one is a little rough. It's got some wear around the edges, but the vinyl still sounds amazing. And wasn't all that well received when it first came out. They re-released those singles I just alluded to, Roxanne and So Lonely, and probably about a year later. And that's when they took off. And by that time, they'd already released the follow-up album to this. But yeah, great debut album. Another one, this one, what are we looking at for this one? This would be 79. And this is another one of those albums that, although they are a band from the UK, their biggest success was here in Canada, for whatever reason. But that'd be The Monks, Bad Habits, 1979. And this was actually almost done as a parody to punk rock at the time. Three of the members of this band were from the Strawbs, that were, you know, fairly successful in the UK for sure. John Ford on vocals, Richard Hudson on bass, Brian Willoughby on guitar. They all played with the Strawbs, and they formed this band just for fun. But they did have some good success here in Canada. They sold, I mean, it went 2 times platinum here in Canada. And Drugs in My Pocket cracked the top 20 in Canada in 1980, right? So, but not anywhere else. I mean, it's pretty obscure in the States. Even in the UK, where they're from, they didn't have a lot of success. So, so they played in Canada a lot live, and this album, yeah, fond memories for me. A lot of good tunes on there. Now we'll go to 1980. Another one that I think is relatively obscure, but Killing Joke. 1980, this was released. If I mention one tune off this album, there's a certain demographic that would automatically know, and that would be The Weight. And of course, not to be confused with the band Weight, The Weight. Metallica covered the tune on this on their 595 EP, The Weight. Garage Days Revisited, but this, they call it post-punk. I don't even know what post-punk is. I mean, is that something that follows punk? Like, I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty heavy, and it's their debut album. Although they did have an EP prior to this, Turn to Red, but this was their debut, and I think it's a fantastic album. It's funny because I hadn't heard it for a very long time. And I just decided to, you know, I knew that Metallica had covered that tune from Killing Joke. And so I listened to the whole album one day, and yeah, it's wow. It all came flooding back. It's like, yeah, I remember that. It's a really good album. So I bought it on vinyl, and I don't regret that. It's a great, and it sounds amazing. This one is 1981. This gentleman was well established by this time, but this is his solo debut. And that's the drummer from Genesis. That would be none other than Phil Collins. This is probably best known for In the Air Tonight. That's the huge one. The #1 air drum tune of all time. Switch sides here, maybe. And yeah, it's oh, I can't switch sides because of the light. So this actually, he wrote it when he was doing the demos for this, the writing for this. He had so many songs, you know, going through his divorce and whatnot. It's all personal life. I don't really care too much about it, but wrote so many songs that many of the songs, or at least one for sure, Misunderstanding, appeared on, he was still playing with Genesis. So that song appeared on the Genesis album Duke. But he wrote that during these sessions. But yeah, this is best known for In the Air Tonight. He also did a great cover, well, at least a cover of the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. I don't know if anybody can do a great cover of the Beatles, but that's my opinion. But yeah, this is, love this album. And I like pretty much anything Phil Collins did in the early years. It starts to get away from me a bit with the slower Um, you know, the ballads. I'm not a big ballads, you know, so some of that stuff, but he does it well, I guess. I mean, that's where he actually became bigger than he ever was with Genesis, I believe, was a lot of the stuff he did on the ballads. Anyway, moving on, still with that era. This is 1981, and again, an album that was maybe attributed to the birth of, it was one of the first songs played on, in the States, it was called MTV, but Much Music here in Canada. But yeah, the Go-Go's, We Got the Beat. This is Beauty and the Beat is the name of the album. And then in the summer of 81, when this was released, it was everywhere. I mean, Our Lips Are Sealed, all that. It wasn't my thing so much per se at the time, but I can appreciate the impact they had. And probably even better known for their lead vocalist, Belinda Carlisle, who had a huge solo career. But I actually like that tune in particular, We Got the Beat. It's catchy. It's got a good beat to it. So yeah, good debut album for sure. I think they only did 2 or 3. So before, as I alluded to, the vocalist went on her solo career. One of my favorite vocalists of all time from one of my favorite bands of all time. And this goes to 1982's Robert Plant, Pictures at 11. I just talked about Phil Collins. He appears on this along with another one of my favorite drummers, Cozy Powell. Played on a couple of tracks on this album, but primarily it's Phil Collins. But yeah, Robert Plant's debut. This is from 1982. Actually, the only one he released on the Zeppelin label, Swan Song, before it ceased to exist. And then he created his own label for his next album. Yeah, I forget the name of his label. But yeah, good album and debut. I mean, I personally can't go wrong with anything Robert Plant has done. Primarily, I mean, there's some of the folkier stuff that it's great. I mean, he's an amazing vocalist. So, you know, it's like the old joke. He could probably sing the phone book and it would be awesome, right? Just, you know, Robert Plant. Just my personal opinion. So this next one is actually technically not a debut. Their first 2 albums were released only in Japan. So most of the world didn't have a proper debut of this band until this was released. And unfortunately, or fortunately for some, depending on what side of the coin you're on, this is a band that started out, in fact, the founding member passed away as a member of Ozzy's band. And of course, I'm talking about Randy Rhoads. This was his original band, Quiet Riot, and their world sort of debut, I mean, outside of Japan, Metal Health. And this was huge, 1983, like it can't be overstated. This was actually the first metal album, hard rock, well, metal, they call it metal, album that cracked the Billboard 200. And the significance of this album, it's often attributed to the start of the hair metal genre. I'm not sure where the correlation is there. I never thought of them as hair metal at all. But anyway, yeah, this, and of course, Rudy Sarzo on bass also played with Ozzy, and God, he played with a lot of bands, didn't he? He played with Whitesnake, and, you know, it's almost like the Modest Man. Everything he played on went gold, platinum many times. But yeah, including this one. It went many times platinum, but yeah. And also a cover on here of Slade. Those are familiar with Slade. Come On Feel the Noise is actually a cover from those guys by Quiet Riot. Yeah, another great debut. That's a huge debut. I mean, but again, technically, is it a debut? Probably not, since they already did Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot 2 were released in Japan, and they were on a major label. They just weren't released in North America. Another debut by a band, or at least a vocalist, and the members of the band were already well established. But yeah, Dio, Holy Diver, 1983. He left Sabbath and took a couple of the guys with him. In fact, Vinny Appice, or Vinny Appice, is what we used to refer to him as. I guess it's Appice. I don't know. You know, not clear on the pronunciation, but great debut. Also Jimmy Bain, who he played with bass in Rainbow, and then Vivian Campbell rounded out the lineup. Amazing guitar player. played with Thin Lizzy, Whitesnake, and following his stint with Dio, was recruited by Def Leppard in '92 after Stephen Clark passed away, their guitar player. I don't really follow Def Leppard other than their first 3 albums, really. But yeah, that's presently, I guess, who he plays with, even if they're still playing. I'm not sure. But yeah, great debut, Ronnie James Dio. Love all of his stuff, Sabbath, Solo, Rainbow. I've heard some of the Elf stuff. I'm not, vaguely familiar with it. I've heard it, I don't know. But yeah, certainly Rainbow, Sabbath, Dio, killer. And now we'll go to, this brings us to 84, and Out of the Cellar, Rat. Technically their debut, although they had done an EP prior to this as well. And a couple of the tunes on that EP, Back for More and You're in Trouble, appear on this one. But yeah, this I think is probably their biggest selling album still. It went 3-4 times platinum in the US. It went gold in Canada. It's what else it did around the world, I'm not sure. But that I'm aware of. And yeah, it was a very big album. Again, in that time, you couldn't go anywhere and not hear it. It's funny how hard rock, and this is beyond the new wave of British heavy metal, things were getting much more airplay. There's certain bands that I still think are amazing, the success they experienced without, like, prior to that. I know they didn't have the music videos or the airplay, and they were still huge. Iron Maiden comes to mind. I mean, they did have some videos, but they certainly didn't get the airplay, or, Metallica till later on. Anyway, getting off topic. Debut, Rat, Out of the Cellar. Now we'll move up to 86. And also a gentleman that was, one second here. Hard work. A gentleman that was very well established. And everybody knows Diamond Dave Van Halen. This was his debut, but again, he had also done an EP prior to this. Crazy from the Heat, Going Crazy from the Heat, the EP. But this is his first full-length album, and Stevie Vai is on this. It's just an amazing band on this album. Yeah, don't need to say much more about that. I never fully appreciated this back then, to be honest with you. In '86, I was into things that were, to me, much heavier, and I knew, of course, Van Halen. I loved Van Halen, and anything with David Lee Roth I still enjoy, but didn't follow his career so much. And you know what, honestly, he benefited a lot from the MTV era. I mean, he's a good looking guy, and he's got that, he's one of the best frontmen of all the time, and as far as frontmen up on the stage, and his ability to perform in front of the camera and all that really benefited David Lee Roth. But hey, they made great music, and I actually appreciate this much more now than I did then. In fact, I've got his other solo albums as well. Good stuff. And probably now, I was talking about some of the biggest debuts of all time. This is actually one of the biggest debuts of all time, and I think it's sold to date over 30 million copies. It's huge. So, of course, I'm alluding to 87 with Appetite, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. This is a repress I got much more recently than when it was released in 87. I do have the original cassette of that as well. But don't need to say a lot about this. I mean, this 87, they were the biggest thing on the planet, right? I mean, Guns N' Roses in that genre, and I alluded to that not being the original pressing. They did release, I don't know how many copies, only a few 100,000, I believe, with a alternate cover on it. That's really hard to find, but you can still find it on the inner sleeve. And what I'm alluding to is the artwork that was on the original cover. I mean, honestly, it's pretty offensive and doesn't belong on the album cover. And of course, that's my 50-some-year-old, more mature self talking, but that's how I feel. I mean, I let the music do the talking. You don't need the gimmickry and all that stuff. And so, hey, my opinions have changed a lot, and so my opinions are just my opinions. That's all it's about. Leave a comment what you think about that. I don't know. I actually prefer the album art that they have on there now. So it's simpler. Sometimes simpler is better. And hey, you're always going to offend somebody no matter what you do. I guess that's the bottom line. But I prefer that. Anyway, enough with the soapbox stuff about that. We're going to go up to 1990 and Mr. Crow's Garden. Another one that was huge as far as debuts. Certainly not one of the biggest of all time, but 5 times platinum is nothing to sneeze about. I mean, you know, this is everywhere. I said Mr. Crow's Garden because that was essentially was the original name of the band. They changed it to the Black Crowes. But yeah, I mean, they had so many hits off this album. I mean, She Talks to Angels, Jealous Again, Twice as Hard. You know, in that that rock genre, certainly not metal or anything like that, but this isn't about one genre or another. So this is just my debuts that I have in my collection, as I mentioned. Great album, though. I still enjoy this one. In fact, probably the first 2 I enjoy more so than anything else they've done since then. And I guess the brothers are still touring and using the Black Crowes name, but they're anything but that band. They were, but whatever. Great debut. 89, and I talked about, briefly I talked about Ozzy before, just because of the association with Randy Rhoads. Another guitar player that spent some time with Ozzy, Jakey Lee. He did Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin. And then he left or was dismissed. I don't know. Again, that's stuff I don't follow, get into too much. And started this band, Badlands. Another band where he recruited people he was familiar with. Eric Singer, who played with Sabbath, and Ray Gillen, who actually played with Sabbath as well, or what Tony Iommi calls Sabbath. I'm not so sure. Well, it's Sabbath. That's what they call it. On that album, Eternal Idol, and some of the stuff he did later on is also marketed as Sabbath. So, but this Badlands album, really good. Eric Singer, the drummer, would actually later join Kiss, and I think that's probably what he's best known for. But yeah, Ray Gillen, he played on the original studio version of Eternal Idol, and he's the vocalist. That's who I'm referring to here. But then it was never released. They re-recorded the vocals with Tony Martin, and that's Tony Martin is credited with, you know, a few albums with Tony Iommi and Sabbath. But this is a great debut, Badlands. And I'm going to end it with one that was very popular. I'm not so sure globally, but certainly North America and Canada. You all remember a show from the late 70s, early 80s called SCTV, right? Well, come on, you hoser. Take off. Bob and Doug was a great debut album. And even had a guest appearance by the vocalist from Rush, our very own Canadian Geddy Lee, and you know, he appeared on here. So, you know, like $10 is $10, right? So yeah, great debut, and I've still got the inner sleeve. Actually, I have a copy of that, and so does Jen, my wife. She has a copy as well. So she had hers way before I had mine. Full disclosure. But the Hoser Times inside still have the liner. The Daily Hoser it was, not the Hoser Times. The Daily Hoser. There you go. The Daily Hoser. Bob and Doug. I mean, this was a massive, massive album in 81, 81, yeah. Yeah, the phone company or hosers. I mean, this just, yeah. Beer stores on strike. All cops be on the lookout. What else we got here? Be a guest on the Great White North. I mean, the crossword puzzle for Bob and Doug's brain teaser. Take off to the Great White North. So I will leave it at that. So take off, you hosers. And again, season's greetings. Merry Christmas. Enjoy your holidays, however you observe them. And take a minute, like, subscribe, leave me a comment about some debuts. Again, I have to mention there will be another video, at least one, of debuts I do, more debuts. I'm just trying to keep them in a reasonable time frame here. Any comments you leave, I will definitely address. And until then, thanks for watching Twanger's Turntable, and keep your turntables turning. Peace out.